And joining me for the Drive Time programme this evening is Judith Clementson, the Referendum Party's prospective parliamentary candidate for Surrey South West. Judith, you've just been announced as the candidate. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What exactly do you hope to achieve in this area?
I believe I'm going to give somebody, the people of Surrey South West, the opportunity to have a voice on how they feel about Britain's role in Europe.
What makes you think that a lot of them want that choice?
Because they're British. And I think, first and foremost, most people are concerned about the sovereignty. They want to remain British, and they are concerned that the government and the opposition are both on a one-way trip to a federal Europe, and they're doing this with an attitude of, we know best, leave it to the professional politicians, and they are completely ignoring the silent majority who are shouting out to be heard.
I take on board what you're saying, but if people don't care about a referendum, if they're more interested in tax, in how much they've got to spend, about education, about unemployment, what can you offer to them?
I can say to these people that those are all issues that everyone in this country are concerned about. And they are all apolitical issues as far as I'm concerned. We are all worried about them. It's just the way that they're handled that makes it different. And therefore, as a prospective parliamentary candidate, I would not be tied by a party line that says that I must do this or that, irrespective of how the people in the constituency feel. I would be able to go out there and represent those people fairly and truly and get what we all want: a good health service, a good education, and law and order.
You're a busy woman. You've got other things to do apart from canvassing and knocking on people's doors. What made you take on this task?
Many people, like myself, have always sat in their armchairs and they've talked to the television and they've disagreed about this, that and the other, and they've got quite angry about the things that have been going on. Now along comes someone like Sir James Goldsmith, who has given the people an opportunity to band together. As one person, I could do nothing. I couldn't influence anything. But as part of the Referendum Party, here I am with an opportunity to stand up and gather other people and give the people the right to decide.
Joining me live now is Jake Pugh, representing the Referendum Party. We've had a very gung-ho prediction from your chairman, Lord McAlpine, that your party is going to win 15 seats. Now, that seems to be extremely unlikely.
We obviously hope we'll win as many seats as we can. The point is that if we do win seats, and 15 or any number more, it will allow us to get towards the position where we want to be, getting a referendum on whether Britain is governed by Westminster or Brussels.
Well, let's look at this a bit more closely. Exactly how many supporters have you got at the moment? How many people actively canvassing for you?
The number of registered supporters with the party has doubled since the conference, which was in the middle of October. So our message is clearly getting through. We've had an enthusiastic response. We hope and believe that's going to continue.
But I'm not talking about overall. I'm talking about you specifically.
In my constituency?
In your constituency, hand on heart, how many people have signed up to knock on those doors?
221.
Not many, is it?
It's quite a lot more than the Conservative and Labour parties have got.
What are their figures?
I was chatting to one of the councillors in the local authority, and active supporters in the Conservative Party is certainly considerably less than half of we've got. The Labour vote in Richmond and Barnes last time was one of the lowest in the whole of England.
So what's your strategy going to be within Richmond?
I hope you don't think I'd be quite as naive as to tell you 5 months before the election exactly what we're going to do, but we're currently making strategy plans and we're looking forward to the fight commencing.
Oh, don't let's be coy about this. I mean, leaflets, what? I mean, it's not a national secret, surely, how you're going to campaign.
No, we shall use some of the traditional methods, but we're a new party and we've got some novel ideas which we're looking forward to putting into practice.
But you're not going to tell the electorate about them, at least not at the moment.
I certainly will be telling my electorate in Richmond Park. I'm looking forward to do so.
I'm sure they look forward to the great secret. Jake Pugh, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks a lot.
So Susan Anderson, you're the prospective parliamentary candidate for Dover.
Yes.
Why exactly did you decide to stand for the Referendum Party in the first place?
Well, I think for some time I had the feeling that I wasn't happy with the way things were going for the country, the way we were progressing towards Europe. I'd done things like talk to friends about it. I'd even written to the local newspaper a couple of times, but gone no further than that. It was only when I saw James Goldsmith's statement of aims about the Referendum Party that I realised this is for me, this is what I've been feeling. I want to be a part of it.
So you've got no political experience whatsoever?
None whatsoever, no.
Are you qualified then to stand?
I believe I am. We're not really standing on a platform as politicians. We very much want to get to the people in the street too, the British people, people like me, people like you, who feel that they should have a say in where the country is going so that we can let them decide. I just believe that I'm one of those people and I'm more able to talk to them about it than maybe a high-handed, very experienced politician.
But clearly you're going to risk the accusation that you're just playing at politics.
I don't think I'm playing at politics at all. I think what I'm doing is fighting very hard for a referendum for the people so that they can decide on the future in Europe for this country.
Are you going to win?
I certainly expect to, and I'll work very hard to do so.
What about the overall result? I mean, how many seats do you expect to gain throughout the length and breadth of Britain?
I couldn't possibly hazard a guess at this stage. Obviously, it's very early days, but I would expect we will certainly have some members in Parliament.
But your chairman has said 15.
Well, I think maybe he's being a little pessimistic.
How many do you think then? Go on, have a guess.
I think it's a little unfair to put me on the line like that. I only know about my own seat. I believe I have a very good chance of winning that. I think it is a pessimistic view. I think we will have more than 15 seats in Parliament.
Susan Anderson, let's wait and see if you're right. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Don't be distracted by me.
It's difficult.
Christopher Nguyen, your opponents have claimed that the Referendum Party is just the hobby horse of a very rich man. How do you react to that?
We're going to prove them wrong. It's a very important party with a very important message, and we've had a tremendous response already throughout the country to our message, and we will prove them wrong.
Now, it's easy to talk about a tremendous response. How big a response?
A lot of people I speak to in the street, people I speak to as friends, people I meet and talk to, they are fascinated and interested in the Referendum Party. They agree with the aims of the Referendum Party. We've had many people registering as supporters and helpers for the Referendum Party. It's pointless to mention figures at this point because it's an ongoing situation and the lists are ever growing, but there is a huge interest out there which we intend to capture.
So you're on the crest of a wave, you get in, you've got, say, 15 MPs, which is what your own chairman is. That's right, that's
I
what
think he's
predicting.
pessimistic. I think there will be more.
Fine, fine. So what happens then? I mean, you will have achieved your aim, you're going to get the referendum, then you're going to disappear, aren't you?
Once we have achieved the aim of a referendum, the Referendum Party itself will disband because it will have achieved its aim. Then what will happen is that voters may go back to voting for their traditional parties, Tory or Labour, in the knowledge that when they vote for their traditional parties will be able to carry out the policies that they're voted in for.
Why shouldn't they just vote for their traditional parties in the first place? After all, the Conservatives and Labour have said they will have a referendum on a single currency.
The referendum on a single currency is a phony referendum. It's simply one of the issues, and we have already agreed in parts 1 and 2 of the Maastricht Treaty that we must run our economy for the benefit of Europe, and we must run our economy for the benefit of Europe whether we're in or out of a single currency. They're merely trying to confuse the issue and keep people away from learning about the big issue, which is who runs Britain. Is it Westminster or Brussels?
Christopher Nguyen, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. Thank you. Anuradha Buddhia, why do you say that we need a referendum?
the time has come when the people ought to have a say as to whether or not they're content for us to go along this road of becoming part of Europe, a more integral part of Europe, and losing our identity, or whether we choose to remain a national state, but not necessarily not working within Europe, but still having the links there.
Why did you specifically want to become a candidate for the party?
It's an issue that I do hold very dear to my heart. It's important that the people do have a say in what they do and do not want to happen in their lives with their country.
But you've got no political experience.
And that's the beauty of the Referendum Party. We are simply the ordinary man and woman on the street who say we want to say in how our country is ruled and in what decisions our country takes and where we go from here.
But there are those who would say you're just self-opinionated men and women who want the country to go in a certain direction, which not everyone wants to follow. I mean, why do you need to dictate to people who are not politicians?
We're not politicians, no, we're not dictating. All we're saying is, come on everybody, let's really think about this issue ahead of us. Let's really think, do we really want to go down this road or not? It's just ordinary people speaking to other ordinary people and saying, you have a choice, exercise it.
How many people are going to exercise that choice and vote for the Referendum Party?
We hope a very substantial number will be exercising their decision, their choice, and will be voting for us.
And do you think you stand any chance in Hackney and Stoke Newington?
Absolutely, I'm very confident.
It's a strongly socialist area.
It is, but we are a single-issue party. Once we've achieved our aim, once we've pushed forward for this referendum, then it is open for the ordinary people to go back and vote for whatever party, of whatever persuasion they choose.
Briefly, do you think the majority of people in Hackney even know what a referendum is?
I'm sure they will do by the time we go to election.
Anuradha Buddhia, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Tonight, Rupert Smythe is with us in the studio. He's the MP for Critchley West and he's today criticised the Referendum Party and said they're simply trying to split the vote. We brought him together with the Referendum Party's prospective parliamentary candidate for the area. And Mr Smythe, can you tell me why you're so concerned about this party when you've said in the past that they're nothing more than a minor irritation?
Carol, the issue is not really whether they're a minor irritation or not. The point is this. The only reason that Goldsmith is doing what he's doing is simply to irritate the Conservative Party. He knows there's no other way he can get what he wants, so what he's trying to do is irritate the government into giving him the referendum he wants. We won't be pushed around by despot billionaires. It's just not going to happen. It's as simple as that.
Judith Clementson, what's your response to that?
My response is that James Goldsmith is just one man. If James Goldsmith is prepared to put a platform for the ordinary people, and that includes Conservative and Labour voters and Liberal voters, to have a voice, then I really think that you are a little arrogant to try and put down his message.
Well, I think you said it yourself. You know, Sir James Goldsmith is only one man. As far as I can see, he is the only man of the Referendum Party, and I think he simply uses people like you. And, you know, unfortunately, if you don't see it and you see it in some grand plan, then fair enough. The fact is this man is a billionaire. He doesn't live in Britain. He's a member of the European Parliament, which he never attends, by the way, and simply wants to come
But in
over.
the cause of fairness, I mean, there's nothing wrong with, but it's not a criminal offence to be a billionaire, and you called him a despot. He's really just putting his money where his mouth is.
As you know, the Conservative Party does back up small businessmen. Sir James started as a small businessman, and a very wealthy one at that. What I'm saying is simply this. He's taken his money to achieve what is now, I imagine he's very bored. He's got nothing to do anymore. He sold Cavenham Foods. What better to do with your time than sort of enter into the puddle of British politics? And that's exactly what he's doing.
Right,
what I'm saying is this. He's the only man there. It's Sir James Goldsmith. There is no real party.
Enough of the insults. Judith, what's your counter-accusation to this, basically? I mean, Sir James, he is a wealthy man. I mean, has he really got the courage of his convictions?
I think, first of all, that Rupert, if I may call you Rupert, is a very arrogant politician, and I'm afraid that is the way that politics have gone. The Conservative Party, in particular, have assumed this arrogance that the British electorate don't know and don't understand the big overall views of Europe, and consequently they are not prepared to listen to the people who are shouting very loudly that they want to be heard. Now, no matter how you hide behind the fact that Sir James is a billionaire and he is this and he is that and he lives here, it doesn't matter. What he has done is offered people like me, the people that you should be caring about, the opportunity to stand up and be heard. And I would say this, that if it were the fact that the British politicians today cared more about the electorate and listened more to them rather than the protection of their own salaries, then I think we would all not have to be here.
In fairness, I mean, isn't this the case that...
Well, I mean, if I can come back on the main and substantive point, it's quite simply this. The Conservative Party's offered a referendum on a single currency. I don't really see what Sir James is now going on about. I don't see how you can call us arrogant when we've asked the people to have their say. Every 5 years the people get their say. You can't say that we don't understand the people, we're too arrogant. We put forward a whole policy for government. We don't put forward one thing on Europe and expect them to then back up our ideas. We give a manifesto. This covers everything from your day-to-day health, how much money you have in your pocket. Every single issue of national government we put forward, and that's why the people vote for a government. How can you call us arrogant? We stand there, the people either vote for us or not. It's as simple as that. What I'm saying is there's now no need for Sir James Goldsmith's
I think
party.
that's perfectly wrong, and I think you have to be very, very careful that what you are offering people is a vote, a promise of a vote, on a single European currency.
And
that
there
is
we
not
must
the
stop.
issue.
I'm sorry, but time has run out. Judith Clementson, Rupert Smythe, thank you very much indeed. Good evening and thank you for joining us this evening. Rupert Smythe, the MP for Critchley West, has today criticised the Referendum Party and said they're simply trying to split the vote. Tonight we've brought together Mr Smythe and the Referendum Party's prospective parliamentary candidate for the area, Jake Pugh. Mr Smythe, why are you so critical of the party which in the past you've said they're of no consequence to me?
They are of no consequence. All I can say to you is this. Once again, the government has listened to the people. The people are obviously concerned about Europe. We've accepted that, which is why we're taking the policy we're taking. We've offered, and the Prime Minister has offered quite clearly, a referendum on the European issue, on a single currency, the most important issue, whether you have your own pound or whether you use a euro pound. I don't think the government could be any more straightforward than that and can give no fairer choice to the British people.
Jake Pugh, that's the case, isn't it? I mean, the government and indeed the Labour Party is offering a referendum on a single currency.
It's so nice being in the hands of men of such principle, isn't it? Sir Rupert was one of the people who said a year ago that there were no circumstances under which we would have a referendum in this country at all. We don't have a referenda. The fact that at the same time they were promising one to Northern Ireland on any significant proposals emerging from the peace process, they're happy to grant a referendum on that. They're now happy to give us a referendum on the narrow issue of a single currency. We never know where they stand. They're changing their position all the time.
Rupert Smythe, why don't you widen the issue instead of just having the single
Well, I mean,
currency?
first of all, if I can answer the point of Mr Pugh, I mean, quite simply this. Politicians like myself who try and represent constituents, try and represent as we can basically the broad view of the country. On the one hand, we're clobbered if we don't do anything. Why don't you do anything? You never listen to the people. And on the other hand, when we do something, we're told, well, you keep changing your mind the whole time. I think when the Conservative government sits down, listens to the broad people as a whole, as we did over the community charge, that is a good sign of government, a flexible government that's working. And we're putting forward clear principles which we believe in and which we wish to uphold.
OK, fine, I take your point.
Now I understand why they're relinquishing all the levers of government, because they've got so confused and upset that the people get annoyed with the policies they've taken. This is why they're passing over the levers of government.
Can I just,
There's no
put
law
you...
they can make which is not sovereign
Fine.
in this country. We want to pass over all the control of the economy.
Could I briefly, though, just put to you one point? You are surely, are you not, just trying to split the vote? Briefly.
We're trying to get every vote we can. We're trying to split the Conservative vote, the Labour vote and the Liberal vote. We want votes from everybody, certainly.
I think the fact is, Mr Pugh, your party is basically just an anti-European party. Well, we want to work within Europe. We want to offer people at the same time a choice on what is the most fundamental issue over Europe at the moment, the single currency. You simply want us to get out. It seems clear from all of your literature that I've read.
There's no question. I certainly haven't seen any literature which recommends us pulling out of the European Union.
Your latest question, is this ridiculous? Your latest question seems quite clear. I mean, as far as I can see it, it says federal Europe or not.
Why is it, from an economic point of view, you want to have such strong links into one global area, but not into the rest of the world? We want to trade into Asia, North America, and to Europe.
Gentlemen, this is an argument which is clearly going to run and run. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening, and I hope you'll be with us again next week. Good night. And joining me on the breakfast programme this morning is Sheila Shepherd. Welcome. She's the prospective parliamentary candidate for Lewisham Deptford. Now, what exactly is the Referendum Party for whom you'll be standing? Can you clarify? Because I think a lot of people don't know.
Right. The Referendum Party is a new party. We're standing in this election. We're putting up candidates in virtually all of the constituencies in the country. And what we're asking for is a referendum so that the people of Britain can decide what kind of relationship they want with Europe. What we feel is that the politicians have been taking us gradually into a more federal Europe without the permission of the people. Back in 1975, we did have a referendum about Europe, but at that time we thought, certainly I thought, and I think most people felt that we were voting whether or not to stay in what was a free trade area, a common market. What's happened since then is that the situation has moved on drastically, and the situation that we're in now is much, much more than a common market. What we have now is effectively political union. And nobody really knows whether that's what the people of this country want. So the Referendum Party is asking people to vote for us, Referendum Party candidates. When we are elected, we will then force a referendum on Europe. And when that referendum has taken place, Referendum Party candidates will then resign from Parliament and the party will dissolve.
OK, I'll come to that point in just a moment. But the Referendum Party acknowledges that it is a single-issue party. What are you going to say on the doorsteps when people say, what are you going to do about tax? What are you going to do about the National Health Service? I've been on a waiting list for 18 months.
OK. You're quite right. The Referendum Party is a single issue, but this is the only issue in town. It's the only issue that matters, because the situation at the moment is that our politicians may talk about what they're going to do about tax, what they're going to do about agriculture, fishing, any other business regulation and so on. But in fact, they have no power. These decisions are all made in Brussels. They're not made by the British Parliament. And the law of this land is now the law as set out in the European courts in Luxembourg. That is the supreme law of this land. So the politicians that we have in Parliament, whoever is elected to Parliament, actually has very, very little power. And if we want to bring power back to Parliament so that people can vote for politicians who really are going to govern them, then they have no choice but to vote for the Referendum Party.
Oh, OK, let me interrupt you there. I mean, you say the referendum, Europe is the only issue in town. I think that a lot of people won't agree. What about the man or the woman who is unemployed? What they want is a job. They couldn't give a jot about Europe.
I'm not saying it's the only problem in town. We have many, many problems in this country. I quite agree. But what I'm saying is that the only way that we can solve these problems is if we bring sovereignty back to Parliament, if the politicians that we elect democratically actually have the power to solve our problems of unemployment, the health service and so on. We need to have politicians who have the power to do something about it. And the situation at the moment is that our politicians in Westminster do not have the power because it's Brussels, unelected officials in Brussels, who are making these decisions.
Finally, and very briefly, as you mentioned a bit earlier, come the election and come a referendum, your party is just going to dissolve, disappear, poof, gone. I mean, what point is there in anyone voting for you?
Well, the point is that just before we poof and disappear, we are going to have a referendum in this country, and every voter in the country will be able to have their say on who they want to govern Britain. Is it Westminster or is it Brussels? And we will have resolved that problem. Whereas at the moment, and for the past 20 years, this problem has gone unresolved and none of our problems are being solved. This way, we will solve this problem once and for all. The people will have their say. They will decide who governs Britain. And then we will dissolve and we can go back to electing politicians, whether it's Labour or Conservative, who can actually govern the country.
Sheila Shepherd, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Craig Robinson, the Referendum Party's first party political broadcast was shown last night. It had Sir James Goldsmith at the beginning, it had Sir James Goldsmith at the end, and there was an extract of his speech in the middle. Isn't he in danger of overshadowing the party completely?
Sir James is a very powerful speaker, and he's obviously instigated and is the power behind our party. But the important thing to remember is that there are now thousands and thousands of people that lengthen the breadth of this country which have come together. And although Sir James is a very good speaker for us and puts a message across very well, there's actually many thousands of people that are supporting and out on the streets helping and pushing our point of view.
But isn't his wealth going to be a barrier? Because people are going to say, well, here's a very rich man, he's got nothing in common with me.
His wealth is of great benefit to those of us that haven't got the money to be able to...
Very useful for the party, £20 billion worth, isn't it?
Well, it allows us to compete with the other parties who are probably going to spend more than we will over the next few months. But it allows people such as myself who don't have large amounts of money to be able to put on a platform and put a point of view across, which I think certainly from my experience, very many of the British people do agree with.
But doesn't he have all the say because he's got all the money?
The point of view that he's expressed is that we should have a referendum on Britain's future relationship with Europe. To that extent, he has a say, and I, for one, and certainly everyone else in the Referendum Party, fully agrees with that.
Would you argue with him?
Against that question? No, not at all, because I fundamentally believe...
Would you argue with him if you didn't believe in something that he was suggesting, in the way that the campaign is being run, for example?
I think the campaign's being run very, very expertly indeed.
But if you didn't think so, would you have a go? Would you say, look, Sir James, you've got it wrong?
I certainly disagree. I'd have no problem with that. I don't know. I've never met the gentleman myself. I agree with the platform that he's putting forward. I'm speaking about it locally, and there's clearly an awful lot of support.
Briefly, are you going to win?
I think we will win the argument, and I think we will gain a referendum.
Well, in the words of the cliché, we wait and we see. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. Douglas Ellison, thank you for joining us live this evening. A campaign rally held in your area today, Sir James Goldsmith, your leader, addressing it. An unfortunate day because you've slipped in the polls.
Yes, but I'm sure it's only a temporary setback. As you know, the margin for error in the opinion polls is very large. I have no doubt it is just temporary.
Not too many people there. It's estimated there were about 200 people.
Yes, but it was raining. It was a very cold day. I think from that point of view we had a very good turnout.
What are people saying to you on the doorstep? I mean, are they concerned about the National Health Service, taxes, things that your party is not covering?
They are concerned about the problems of the United Kingdom, yes, but they also recognise there is a bigger issue, the issue of Europe and whether we are governed in Westminster or whether we're governed by Brussels. We are hearing very favourable things on the doorsteps of Greenwich and Woolwich, and I hope that they will come out on polling day to actually register that support.
So, briefly, despite the poor turnout today, all right, we'll say it was the rain, you're going to win?
I absolutely think so. We're certainly confident, I have a good team, and we're doing very well. We look forward to polling day.
Douglas Ellison, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening.
It was a pleasure, thank you.
Thank you. Ian McWhorter, thank you for joining us live. We've just seen a film of Sir James speaking at the rally this afternoon. A lot of money, a lot of organisation, very few people. Where were they? It wasn't raining.
Oh, I don't think there were few people there. Stowmarket is a smallish town, and I think the turnout there we had is the largest turnout of any political rally in the last 50 years. So we are delighted. We're absolutely thrilled at the turnout, and I think that the response from the audience afterwards was tremendous.
But is it a case of money being wasted, a lot of money being wasted?
I don't think it's, you can say it's money being wasted when the the freedom of this country is at stake. I think that it's money enormously well spent, and I think we're going to see this in the polls coming through, the tremendous support that we're having for the party. We're delighted.
Briefly, how is the campaign going? What are people saying to you on the doorstep?
Well, it's been tremendous. I think finally the message seems to be getting through. The media have been concentrating on money and Sir James Goldsmith, but finally we've got to the issues, which is what really matters. And I think people have a very good grasp of those issues, and they're expressing their concern on the doorstep, and we're very pleased indeed.
Ian McWhorter, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.